So I'm really excited today to be here with Merrily, who has a beautiful business helping people choose the right care homes and really working a lot to protect our older generations. So welcome, Merrily, for being with us today.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
So you've had a really interesting career. You've won loads of awards for the work you've been doing over the years. And I'm really excited to understand more about the lessons and insights and some of the interesting stories you've come across along the way. But perhaps you could start with giving us some background about how you came to start your business in the first place.
Well, the business that I'm currently running, I started in 1998, but the impetus for that was my very first business, which I started in 1981. And that was the care at home business. So that was Elder Care Solutions. And I have a master's in social work. And I had two young children and knew I was going to be a single parent at some point. And so was trying to figure out how do I make this work? And that was really looking at my skill sets. And I knew nothing about business whatsoever. I basically hung out my shingles, had a flyer drawn up. I mean, I had done some research, but I really just decided I would just start the business. And the path, I was doing things for working women, but pretty early on, the path to care at home was presented to me. I had someone asked me to do some babysitting, which we now call respite care, for a woman who had Alzheimer's disease. At the time, we didn't even call it Alzheimer's disease. So it was a whole new experience for me. And we took the babysitting job, and then I don't know, maybe 2 weeks later, her husband died, the man who was providing all the care, and we inherited her. So I really created the care at home business based on what her needs were. And she was a client of ours for basically the whole time that I had that business before I sold it. But what I loved about that business, other than the people I cared for, was the educational component of it and how we explained to people what type of care was good for them when someone had frailty at the end of life. So I sold that business in 1996 and stayed on in the management team of the new company for a couple of years. And then the day after my contract was up, I started this business, which is CoreCubed. And it really is, it's a digital marketing company, which I started in 1998. There are two things. One, it's virtual and always has been virtual, which now is not unusual because everybody is virtual now, but it was pretty unusual in 1998. But I started it virtually, and I also started it using the information that I knew about care at home and how we could help other people find out about care at home and also grow their businesses if they were providing care at home businesses. So that's really what I've been doing since 1998. So what is that, 23 years now? And but I've stayed involved in the industry, and I do have a podcast called Help Choose Home, and it's in its 4th year. And basically, it's just educating the consumer about if someone has a care need, what do they do? How do they access it? How do they go about finding care? So, and our staff, as I said, has always been virtual. And in the pandemic, it's been a blessing and a curse, because the blessing is we already knew how to do everything, so we were doing it, so we didn't miss a beat. The curse is now that lots of people are working remotely, we have a lot harder time finding very good new employees, because the working virtually is not a benefit that's unusual to us anymore. It's a benefit that lots of companies are offering now. So, but it's been an interesting journey. I've loved it, and I'm continuing. I've stepped out of the direct management now, and I'm the board chair, but I'm still involved, and I'm spending a lot of my time working as executive vice president of a global technology company that's in the care at home field. So I'm continuing to take that experience and passion and use it in different ways.
I love that story. And it was interesting. We were speaking to Misa Mink recently on the show, and she was saying that you can't think of your first clients as your first clients. They're really your co-creators. And it sounds like your first client really was the co-creator of your business.
Oh, she was. And the fact that that no one, there was very little written about Alzheimer's, and certainly not much about how do you care for someone with Alzheimer's in their own home. And so there were three social work schools in Louisville, Kentucky at the time where I was, and I got students. So I supervised master's level social work students from all three universities to work with me to help create how do we do this. So we really came up with, right now, all the information in literature is basically things that we at one point discovered. So yes, you were
That's
correct.
fantastic. And I really love that you've focused all the way through on education. And that's something that a lot of the time now, particularly now with most marketing being done online, everyone's talking about sharing content, sharing value. But I think a lot of people miss the mark on the education part, because even for pretty much with every business, your clients don't know how to work with you. They don't know how to get the best from your service. You know that, so you have to educate them. But in an industry where you were educating on so many different fronts, how did you find your path there? How did you find the best approaches?
Well, what we found was that, and I'll take Alzheimer's as a perfect example. And we still get calls. Because I'm in the industry, I get a lot of calls from people also just wanting general information. So the first thing I always say is you really need to understand it, because if someone has Alzheimer's disease or any kind of dementia, the conversation, the relationship is different. It's not your normal relationship, because someone who is cognitively impaired doesn't respond as they had in the past. And so you really have to learn how to deal with that. The biggest thing is the issue of orienting to truth. And the person with a dementia doesn't need to be oriented to truth. If they think their husband is still alive and is just out the grocery store and they're going to see him in a few minutes, you don't want to make them suffer that loss again by telling them that he's not alive, that he died and has been buried. But that's very difficult. So the education component really is to try to help people understand that when someone gets older, well, first of all, people don't always need care. So people grow old and die without ever needing care. So there isn't a one size fits all. So if your loved one has Alzheimer's disease, that's going to be a completely different kind of care than if they broke a hip and they're in the hospital and coming out recuperating from a hip. So the education component is really to help them understand that, number one, not everyone who is getting old is frail. And number two, if you do have a frailty, it's particular to that person and how they respond to that. So you really have to arm yourself with understanding what you're dealing with when you have someone who is frail or needs care. So, and that just by doing that, you mentioned content. That's what really is important, because if someone needs care, they're going to Google whatever their loved one's issue is, and so that's where the really nicely developed and helpful content comes into play, because then they'll find the business that we're promoting because we've put that information out and it's accurate and it's timely and we change it a lot.
Yeah. That's great. And as I say, I think that educational part is so important. And I love that that's a fundamental part of your business. So you went from being a social worker and then deciding to start your own company around helping people, which is already an extremely brave thing to do. But what I can imagine that going into a support industry like that it must have been quite difficult, because people don't always support things that you think, oh, everyone's going to support this. I know that a lot of people have been caught out without thinking, well, I'm going to do this really good thing and everyone's going to love it. And then people don't necessarily support it in the ways that you want to. Was that your experience at all?
I had some very early successes in terms of placing the right people in, and also in finding consultants and business advisors to help me. I will say, though, the first time I went into my very first referral, when I didn't know anything about business, the person I was paired with, who was supposed to advise me, said, "That's not a good idea," and couldn't understand. He said, "There's millions of housekeeping businesses," and I said, "Well, I'm not really doing I'm not doing a housekeeping business. Yes, there is some housekeeping involved when you take care of someone who's old and frail, but that's not the primary reason that we're there." And so I did have some of that in the beginning. The other thing I think I had was, I remember being at a meeting, and the business grew fairly rapidly because I was meeting a need, and there were just not a lot of people out there doing that at the time. It was, this was 1981 to 85, I guess. And so, it was 1990 when I took a fairly long course, a strategic planning course, which is helpful to me to this day. And I still go back to that because it really made me understand the components of business. It made me understand what I understand very well now, which is recurring monthly revenue and how important that is to profitability. And it also made me understand that I could, because I'm a social worker, so even making a profit was difficult for me in the beginning. I wanted to give away money if I had it. And so I really learned, how do you manage profitability in a business, and how do you share that with your employees, and how do you motivate them using that profitability, and all the business components that fall into that.
I love that you
answered your question.
Yeah, well, I love that you got the advice you needed to get started, to fill that gap in the business understanding. But then I guess, knowing that this is going to be a long-term thing, you went and got educated yourself in what you needed to know for your business. And it sounds like it's been a very step-by-step and learn as you go, but keep building and growing. And when it came to the profitability piece, because I know this is something that a lot of particularly women struggle with, is charging their worth, because we do like to help people. And then telling people they have to actually pay us for this is sometimes doesn't always sit right with their values. Was there anything, was it just the understanding the business principles that helped you shift that thinking, or was there anything else around that helped you start getting more comfortable with making a profit?
It was not only really understanding the business principles, it was understanding how profitability actually helps the community and helps the employees. And because if you don't have a profitable, successful business, then you're not really you're not giving back. You may be paying yourself, but you're not advancing anything if you're not feeding into the community. So I early on started, and still to this day, do a profit sharing program. And it's a fairly generous profit sharing program. We take a third of the profits and we distribute them back to the employees. And we have a formula we've worked out for the home care business. It was based on longevity and the hours that people work, because our hardest issue is trying to get people to realize that they were our product in the home care industry. So they had to work in order for us to have a business. So when they didn't want to go to work, we didn't make any money, or we'd put someone else in, and the client might not have been as happy with that other person. So we really worked on, how do we educate the people who work for us to know, and a lot of the people in home care they never have any extra money, because they're working for one wage, and all they get is however many multiples of hours of, times that wage. So it was the first time many of these people had ever had access to a lump sum of money. And that was an interesting thing, because it was, in the beginning, it scared people, because they thought, if you're giving me this much money, how much money must you have? So we really had to do a lot of education to let people understand what we were trying to do was we had a lovely business, and if we shared some of the profit with the employees, then how they could help us make more money. So we do that to this day, and it's it's really satisfying, I guess I should say, to do those profit distributions, because most of the people who work for me have families. And so it's, it's college tuition and things that that you wouldn't normally be able to afford.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And it's showing that you care about your staff, then they care about the business, and your business, of course, is the people that you look after. So that's a really important element. Was there anything else you put in place to help educate your team in the ways that you wanted to work, and how to look after people, and how to help build that business?
What a great question. Yes. We are pretty early on created a program, because I told you I had students that helped me learn how to do this and what was the best way to do it. So we created a caregiver certification program that we got licensed by the state of Kentucky. And so we educated our caregivers in lots of different things, not just the mechanics of medically caring for someone, but how to cook creatively, how to cook nutritionally, how to cook with fresh produce, things that you wouldn't normally learn sometimes if you came from a lower socioeconomic environment. And we also taught them lots of things about caring for people with Alzheimer's disease and dementia, so that when they came into a home, they would know what they needed to do. And the other thing we did was like sort of social graces. How do you set a table? How do you answer the door? How do you do some of those things when someone you're caring for can't do them, but you don't want to offend them? And do you stay in the room when their family comes to visit, or do you exit gracefully? Just anything that had to do with care at home, we did. And then our certified caregivers, of course, ended up doing very well, because the more they learned, the better they were at care, and the more hours they picked up, and the more hours they picked up, and the longer they worked, the more they got in profit share. So it was pretty much a win-win-win for everybody.
Yeah. And I think having the right people in the right place really, I mean, it's people that build businesses. And you mentioned that you started your business, you were a social worker, you didn't really have the business skills. But do you feel that having that social worker background actually was an advantage for you in not necessarily putting the business and profit before actually the people and the caring side of your business?
I think it's been a benefit not only in that business but in this business, because I still, when we have a new client, we're interviewing a new business, we do what we call an assessment in social work terms, which is really what we did for families when they came in. You're really looking at the whole situation and trying to figure out, you've got all these options. So what should you do first, and how should you prioritize those things? So it's pretty much the same in business. We do that same thing right now still. So yeah, I think my social work degree has been really helpful to me.
Mm. Yeah, I love that, because yeah, we forget, well, not that we forget people, but perhaps we don't always put the right emphasis on caring and educating people inside the company, which is one of my passions. So when I worked in corporate for many years, I worked on internal communications, which was making sure that the people came with the strategy, because otherwise it just didn't work. And it was amazing how many people would just totally forget about the people on the inside who are actually the ones that are actually going to make things work for you.
Well, I think it works both ways. I mean, I know we laugh. Well, we don't laugh about it. I guess we have to laugh, because you'd cry if you weren't laughing. But how you're treated, or at least how I feel treated by service people. And oftentimes I just want to say, I'm the customer. I am paying you right now to do this. And so would you, just at least be nice to me? So I think that focusing on the people and really always understanding what it is that they want. I'll give you a fabulous example that just came up this last week. I always had said, when someone's unhappy with whatever you've done, and someone's always going to be unhappy if you have a business, you're not going to keep everybody happy. And when they do come to you with that unhappiness, to just listen to them. And once you've let them talk, then say one simple thing and say, what is it I can do that would make this okay? And 9 times out of 10, once they've vented, that's really all they wanted to do. You know, sometimes they'll say, you know, they want something else, and whatever it is, generally we give to them, you know, just because you've asked them. And if they do want something, then do it. But what most people do, number one, is become defensive. And number two is they start offering discounts or rebates or, you know, money back. And the money is usually not the issue.
Yeah.
If someone's paid for service, they want whatever it was they paid for. And if you can make it right, then they're fine with it. And we don't lose customers when we do that.
Yeah. I remember in my old waitressing days, I worked for, it was a chain of restaurants, and it was kind of the lower end of the nice family restaurants, but they had really clear customer service standards. And if ever anyone was unhappy, we had to check in with them, make sure everyone's happy. And if there was ever a complaint, then we had full authority to do whatever it took to put that right for people. And it was amazing that I noticed that anyone who complained, and then we took the time to listen to them, as you said, and then say, well, how can I put this right? Would you accept this? And then they were like, oh, yeah, thank you. And they became our most loyal clients.
Yes.
It was incredible. So I think when people do complain, it's really an opportunity for you to show that you care and to learn something about your business. Like, oh, right, we're not getting this bit quite right. We need to do something about that. So I think these complaints, you say lots of people get defensive about that, but actually it can be some of our biggest opportunities.
I would agree.
So, as you started your business back in the 80s, what have been your biggest lessons? If you were to start all over again, would you do it the same way, or is there any couple of things that you think, no, that bit I would definitely do differently?
You know, I think I would have learned a little more about business before I started a business. I think the first year was harder than it needed to be. But once I really understood that I had a business and that I really wanted to be successful, I pretty much followed a nice path of setting goals and then figuring out how to reach those goals. I would have been a little kinder and nicer, I think, along the way. I tended to be a little volatile sometimes. And and this is going to sound, but because I'm a woman, oftentimes emotions or being hard nosed, you know, being strict is not accepted as well. And so I think I would have worked a little harder on trying to just understand, yes, I am a woman, and what I do is going to be viewed differently, and I just need to learn how to do that. So I think I also would have dressed up more. You know, I was businesslike, you know, and I think I could have had more fun along the way. But anyway, I think from a business standpoint, I can't think of any critical junctures that I would have done different. I knew when it was time to sell the business and for me to move on. And so that was a nice learning process. I went through one whole round of someone trying to buy me and then I knew how to do it. And so then I actually put the dollar figure I wanted down and got that and worked towards that. So, but I still learn every day. I mean, I'm still completely excited every time I learn a new technology or see a new solution for something or come up with some type of something that I think is a good idea to solve a problem. So I still enjoy all of the components of the business. And I do love watching it grow and be successful. I think that's one of the most fun things about having a business.
Yeah. Yeah, you never quite know where it's going to take you or what you're going to learn next.
That's true.
So you mentioned that.
Oh, go ahead.
You mentioned, sorry, I think we've got a bit of a delay at the minute, but that's fine. You mentioned that you knew when it was time for you to step out of one business and start a new one. How did you know that it was the right time for you?
I was bored with what I had to do to make that business successful. And I find that with a lot of entrepreneurs, that you've done something, you've made it work, and now you're ready to do something else. So I think I wasn't bored with the people. I wasn't bored with with my clients or patients. I was bored with what you have to do to make it work. And I knew that I needed more stimulation in my life in order to continue to be excited about the business, because the care at home business is a fabulous business, but it's pretty simple. And every time I tried to add bells and whistles, nobody wanted bells and whistles, which is really funny, because in the industry, the trade associations for the industry, they're still doing the exact same education they did, 40 years ago. And a whole lot of it has to do with trying to make the business more exciting, because the person who runs it is bored. And so, because it really, and it really is a pretty simple equation. And so I recognize that when I see people doing it. So, but I'm not bored at all now, and heaven forbid. So there's always something fun and new to do and new things to learn. So I've maintained my capacity to find new things that are not boring. But that was really it. I didn't feel like I was giving it my best if I wasn't 100% enthused about it.
Yeah, I think I'm on my third business now, and I think looking back when you were saying that, it's like, yeah, that's what it was. I hadn't quite put my finger on what it was that prompted me to that. Yeah, it's time to do something different, and I almost felt guilty for, well, that business is going fine, so why do I feel compelled to do something different now? I mean, they all had a good innings, but yeah, I think it was that. I was got a bit bored of doing the same thing, and I didn't have any personal growth anymore. I think that was something I was quite conscious of. So, yeah, thank you.
It's a good way to put it, the personal growth, because I do think if you have that entrepreneurial spirit, I think that you are always looking for solutions to problems, or some way to do something differently that's better, that's not been done before. So, I mean, I think and I feel that today. I have that in my current work environment. So I like that.
Yeah. So what's next?
Oh, I actually have a dream. I've not told anyone. Well, actually, I have told two people.
Oh, we're having an exclusive. I love it.
We'll see if this works. This may be a pipe dream, because I'm not really certain it will work. But oddly enough, a couple of things have just happened that I think are the stars aligning. I told you when we were chatting that I used to travel extensively, and I really do enjoy travel. And I've been taking my grandchildren on trips now, and they love travel. And so I love the idea of virtual reality. And I don't know if it would be possible, but as people get homebound, they miss, like this last year of COVID, I have missed travel so much. And my dream is to, as I travel, to record it, and to then give the recordings to the care homes and people who are in home care, and let them experience it with virtual reality like you're really there. So I don't know if that's possible, but a funny thing just happened last night. I collect contemporary art glass, which is a personal passion. And I was on the call with the Corning Museum of Glass, which is probably the premier glass museum here. And they are sending an Oculus, the viewers, to people. And we're doing like a lending library kind of a thing, where we do it and then send it on. But so I will actually, I've not actually had a pair of them that I've used. And so this will be my first experience, but I thought that. And then I have a son who is a mechanical engineer, and one of his very best friends, who I knew when they were in college together, happens to be the lead engineer on some of this virtual reality stuff. So I think those two things have aligned my stars. So that's my dream, is that when I'm traveling, to record that and then share those experiences with people who are homebound. So
I
I
think
don't know.
that's just an incredible idea. And I love that you shared it, because now, I'm already thinking, who have I got on my network that could help with that? And I'm sure everyone listening is going to be doing the same, because that's just such a wonderful idea. I really hope. Well, I look forward to having you back on, and you can tell us how it worked out.
I'm excited about it. I've told everyone that I'm pulling out of most of what I'm doing by Thanksgiving of this year. And so I'm laying the groundwork so I can make this transition. So, but I think it would be fun. Plus, I think I could write off the travel.
Well, there's
legitimately and honestly, I think I could write it off.
Yeah, and you'll have to let me know when you're coming past Switzerland, and I'll take you around the Alps.
I will do that. I will do that. I want to take the kids on the little trains. We went to Stad and someplace else on a little train, and I thought that was so beautiful.
That little train goes past my house.
I was going to say, that's where I told you I know your city and from that one of those trips.
Yeah, great. Well, I look forward to seeing you. So, Merrily, you have shared so much value and so much information, and I've really enjoyed listening to your story and your journey. Is there anything that we haven't touched on yet that you would love to share with the audience? You'd really love them to know about what it takes to build a business or something to prepare for?
I think the biggest thing is having faith in yourself. And, oftentimes hear people say, well, I could have done that, or, that's no big deal. And I'm thinking, just the fact that you decide you're going to do something and then work on how to do it, having faith in yourself. I mean, I certainly were lots of times when people didn't have faith in me, but I always had faith in myself, and I knew I was not going to fail. So I think it's that making certain that you have faith in yourself and that you surround yourself with people who are positive influences and always feeding your need for more information and for doing things better.
Amazing advice, and I could not agree more. I've just published a book about networking, really to encourage more people to see networking as not just a way to find your next client, but it just does so much more for you, surrounding you by these inspiring people, helping you to have more courage, in fact, and it's just a great thing to have. And so I really love that advice. Thank you so much, Merrily.
Thank you very much for having me on the show. I hope people learn from it and enjoy it.
I'm sure they will. If people want to learn more about you and your businesses, how's the best way for them to find you?
Well, CoreCubed, which is CoreCubed.com, that is my main business, and I'm available through that. Help Choose Home is my podcast, and that's available anywhere where podcasts can be heard. And I also have a blog, MerrilyOrsini.com. So lots of ways to contact me.
Thank you so much. And I'll put those links below in the show notes. But for anyone who's out on the road, now they know how to find you. Thank you so much, Merrily.
Oh, thank you. Have a good day.
You too.